Hey kiddos, it's Pastor Scott here, and we don't have Wednesday night Kingdom Kids anymore, but we're going to try to get you opportunities to grow in Jesus and to get in His Word through the technology that we have. And so I've got a lesson for you here today. I want to share with you all as we're in the season of Easter. Who of you remembers what Easter is about? What happened 2,000 years ago at the time of Easter? What did Jesus do at that time? Or what happened to Jesus? Do you remember? He rose from the dead. He died for us. You're right. Yes. And so we're going to talk about that over the next several weeks here as we lead up to Easter and what it is that Jesus did for us. There's a lot that Jesus accomplished for you and for me. And it's so important that we know this because this is big for our lives. And to know how much God loves us, how much He loves you. Do you know that? You are loved. You are made by Jesus Himself for Himself. And He loves you so, so much. So we're going to talk about that, what it means that Jesus died, and one of the big ways that it impacts us. So first off, I've got a question for you. Story here. So when I was growing up, I could be pretty naughty at times. And there were some different things that I would do that was kind of naughty. I would lie. And I would sneak around. I even stole things. And, I needed Jesus to come into my heart and to change me. And there was this time that I had got caught lying. And so, as a parent, what do parents do if we don't follow instructions and we're disobey? What do parents do to help teach us a lesson when we disobey? Do you know? What do parents do? They give us a consequence. They give us a consequence when we disobey. And parents do that to teach us. It's called justice. When we do something wrong, there's a consequence to help make things right. Well, I lied, and there was going to be a consequence for my behavior. And what do you think my brother did? I have a younger brother. And what do you think my brother did? Do you think that he raised his hand? Do you think he told my parents, no, let me take Scott's punishment for him? Do you think he did that? No, he didn't do that, right? That's just crazy. Would you take the consequence for your brother or your sister's disobedience? Would you take their time out or their loss of privileges and screen time or anything like that? Would you take their consequence? No, of course you wouldn't take their consequence. That doesn't make any sense, right? Well, you know what? That's what Jesus did for us. He substituted Himself into our place to take our consequence when it wasn't even His fault. Well, let's get into the Bible here and hear more about that. So I'm in the book of Luke. It's called one of the Gospels. You know what gospel means? Good news. Good news about Jesus. What does the gospel mean? That's right. Good news about Jesus. And so Luke is one of those Gospels that tells us good news about Jesus. And we're in chapter 22. And Jesus and His disciples, they were in this place called the Garden of Gethsemane. And they were praying, and Jesus was praying, and He was talking to God about He knew He was going to have to die. And He was asking God if that was possible, that there be any other way. But He said, I'm going to do, Father, what You want me to do. I obey You. And Jesus was perfect in His obedience, right? Did Jesus ever disobey His Father? No, He didn't. He was perfect. So Jesus is praying. He and His disciples are praying in the garden. They're talking to God. And all of a sudden, there's these soldiers that come marching in. And they've got torches, and they're angry. And Peter is one of the disciples. Do you remember that? Peter's one of the disciples. And he comes out, and he pulls out a sword, and he's going to attack those soldiers and defend Jesus. And who of all is out there with the soldiers is Judas. Do any of you know what Judas was? Was he supposed to be a friend of Jesus, or what was he? He was a disciple. He was a disciple of Jesus, and he was with the soldiers, and he was with them. And Judas here, it comes up to Jesus, and he gives him a kiss on the cheek. Now, we don't greet each other that way. That's kind of silly, right? That's just kind of weird. We don't do kisses. We kind of do a handshake or a fist bump or whatever, but the kiss at this time was a sign of friendship and trust. And Jesus tells Judas, have you come to betray me with a kiss? With that kiss, Judas had told the soldiers that Jesus was the one they should arrest and that he was guilty of breaking the law. Now, has Jesus disobeyed the law, or does Jesus disobey God? No! He's perfect, right? He's sinless. So Judas kisses Jesus. The soldiers get the signal, and they come in with chains and wrap Jesus up. And Jesus tells his disciples, put your swords down. This has to be fulfilled. Well, that's just weird. He doesn't defend himself. He shouldn't be arrested. But he lets them put chains on him and take him away just like he's a criminal. So the soldiers take Jesus away, and they take him before what's called the religious leaders, the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin, all right? And they take him before these Pharisees, and you know what? They had paid people to make lies about Jesus. And so there was these people who had lined up, and they were telling the crowd lies of what Jesus had said or what he had done and how he had broken the law. He had even blasphemed God. Can you imagine that? And you know what Jesus did? How would you feel if people were telling lies about you? How does that make you feel? Thinking like people are telling lies about you to get you in trouble so you get punished. Make me feel angry, right? Pretty angry. What would you do if people are telling lies about you? You say, no, that's not right. You're lying, right? We totally speak up. But you know what Jesus did? He was quiet. He was quiet. He didn't say anything. Did Jesus deserve to be treated like this? He didn't, did he? He didn't deserve this at all. To be chained up, to be lied about. And you know what else they started to do? They were beating him and they were spitting on him. That's horrible. What had Jesus done? Nothing. Jesus had done nothing. How are you feeling right now about Jesus? Feels kind of sad, doesn't it? It feels sad when somebody who is innocent is being treated badly like this, they're not getting what they deserve. This is not just, right? They're not getting what they deserve. Jesus doesn't deserve this. But you know what? Jesus is innocent, but are you and I? Are we innocent? Are we perfect like Jesus? We're not, aren't we? We're not perfect. We've messed up, haven't we? The Bible tells us that all of us have sinned and fall short of following God's ways. And what we deserve for our sin is death, is punishment of death. That death is separation from God who loves us in hell. That's what you and I deserve. That's justice. We sin every day. We disobey God with our thoughts and what comes out of our mouth and how we talk to our brother or sister, or how we treat our parents, or things we do in secret and hiding. we all sin every day. We aren't like Jesus. He's perfect. He doesn't deserve anything negative or bad, but we deserve punishment for our sin. Well, let's keep going here with the story about Jesus. So it gets worse. So they brought in people to lie about him, and he just stays quiet, right? Did Jesus defend himself? Did he yell at them and call them liars? What did he do? He was quiet. He was quiet. So, outside, while Jesus is being grilled and people are making lying and they're beating him and they're spitting on him, outside Peter, you guys remember who Peter is? Who's Peter? He's one of his disciples. That's right. He's one of his disciples. Peter has been, how long has Peter been following Jesus? Has he been a disciple? Do you remember how long that's been? Some of you might know, 5, 10, 3 years. Peter has been following Jesus for 3 years. And remember all that Peter has seen him do? Peter's seen him heal people. Peter has seen him tell the wind and the waves to calm down, and the wind and the waves obey Jesus. He's seen him do all these miracles. And he follows him to this hearing where he's being judged. And they're out around this fire. And people notice Peter, and they're like, you were with Jesus, right? We've seen, you sound like you're a follower of Jesus. And what does he say? Do you know what Peter says? He says, you bet I am. Doesn't. He said, I don't know this man. I don't know what you're talking about. Did you catch that? Peter. Now remember, how long had he been with Jesus? 3 years. And what had he seen Jesus do? Miracles. He knew that Jesus was perfect, right? He knew that out of Peter's own mouth, you know what he said? He said, Jesus, you are the Christ, the Son of God. He knew who Jesus was, really. And what did he say? I don't know him. Don't know that guy. Crazy, right? Well, you know what? Another person came up to Peter, and they're like, we've seen you with this Jesus guy. We've seen you. And he's like, no. I have no clue who he is. Just get away from me. I don't know this guy. And finally, one more person comes up to Peter and says, I for sure know you're a Galilean. You're from up north where Jesus is from. You're a follower of... And he calls down curses on himself. And he rejects it. No, I don't know him. I don't know him. You notice what's in the back here? You know what that animal is? Can you see that? Yeah, that's a chicken. In fact, that's called a rooster. That's a male chicken. It's a rooster. And you know what that rooster does? It makes a loud noise. Cock-a-doodle-doo. The rooster crowed. Well, you know what? Jesus had told Peter that he would betray him 3 times before the rooster would crow. Once that rooster crowed, Peter all of a sudden remembered what Jesus had said. Did Jesus deserve to be treated that way? By his friend Peter. He was betrayed by Judas, one of his followers, with a kiss even. And then people were making up lies about him. And then his own friend, his close friend Peter, who'd seen everything, who knew who he was, denies him. Denies that he even knows him. He doesn't stand up for him. He doesn't go to die with him. Did Jesus deserve to be treated that way? No. No, he doesn't. Well, the story continues to get darker and darker for Jesus. The Jews, they couldn't try Jesus to give him the consequence of death. They couldn't kill somebody by themselves. They had to go to the Romans, who were in charge at that time, and so they went to this guy named Pilate. Pontius Pilate was his name, and he was the governor there. Do you remember what his name was? Pontius Pilate. And so they went to Pilate, and Pilate examined Jesus and asked him questions about who he was. And do you know what Pilate determined about Jesus? Did he say he was guilty or innocent? What did Pilate say about Jesus? He was innocent, you're right. But that wasn't enough for these religious leaders. They knew he was guilty. They hated Jesus. They were jealous of Jesus. They wanted him dead. And so Pilate brings out a criminal, one who we know had broken the law, and he brought out Jesus, and he brought them before the people. And he said, you can choose one. Choose one of these people. Jesus, I know, is innocent. Here's Barabbas, another criminal. Choose which one you want to set free. The other one, I'm going to kill. Do you know who they chose? Barabbas, who is a criminal, or Jesus? Who did they choose? Barabbas. Now, does that make any sense? Barabbas was a criminal. He broken the law. What'd Jesus do? He hasn't done anything. Isn't this getting crazy, right? Jesus is innocent. So Pilate, at this point, you know what he does? He sends him off to be whipped, to be beaten, and to be prepared for the cross. Remember, Jesus didn't deserve to die. He didn't deserve to be lied about. He wasn't getting what he deserved. But you know what? That's exactly why he came. He came to take on himself what you and what I deserved. Remember earlier we talked about how when I lied, I was going to get a consequence from my parents. And my brother didn't offer to take that consequence for me because that just doesn't make sense. But you know what? Jesus came to take the consequence for you and I. He doesn't deserve it. We deserve a consequence for our sin. God is a good God. He's a perfect God. He's just. He must punish those who break the law. He must give a consequence and make things right when we break his law, we disobey him. He's got to do that. But you know how he chose to do that? He chose to send Jesus to take our punishment if we trust in him. Isn't that great news? Jesus took our punishment. It's sad, isn't it? When you think about how you feel at this point, it's sad for Jesus. But do you know what that means? It's freedom for us. That's how much Jesus loves you. Is he put himself in your place. We call that being a substitute. Jesus was our perfect substitute. Can you say that? Jesus was our perfect substitute. He put himself in our place. Why? Why would Jesus do that? That's right, because he loves you. Because he loves you. Do you know what? The only way that works is if we receive it. We've got to pray and ask Jesus, Jesus, would you be my substitute? Would you take my punishment? Because if we don't ask Jesus to take it for us, if we don't receive him taking our punishment for us, then we're going to take that punishment ourselves. We've got to ask for Jesus and recognize that I deserve it. Have you done that? Have you prayed? Have you acknowledged to Jesus? Have you acknowledged to God, I deserve your punishment, oh God. Forgive me. I need Jesus to take my place, to be my perfect substitute. Please, Jesus, do that. And come into my heart. Have you prayed that? Would you do that? Let's do that right now. Jesus, forgive me. I deserve to be punished for my sins. Would you be my substitute? Would you come into my heart? Would you take my punishment? I don't deserve it. I don't deserve it. Thank you so much for your love, Jesus. Thank you. Did you thank God? Did you pray? I hope you prayed with me. Jesus is your perfect substitute because he loves you. We got a memory verse here for today, for this next week. It's out of 1 Peter 3:18. 1 Peter 3:18. It says, "For Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, that he might bring us close to God." We talked about in this story here about how Christ suffered. He only had to do it once. For what? Our sins. Because we had disobeyed God. To sin is to disobey God with our thoughts, with our words, and with our actions. What is sin? Do you remember? It's to disobey God with our thoughts, our words, or our actions. So Jesus is the righteous one. You know what to be righteous means is that they do right things. Jesus did everything right? He was perfect. For the unrighteous, these are those who disobey God. It's those of us who sin are unrighteous. So Christ suffered the righteous for the unrighteous in our place. That's him being our substitute. And why did he do that? So that he might bring us close to God. You see, in our sin, we're far from God. But Jesus, being our perfect substitute, brings us close to God, into relationship with God, so we can experience his love. So let's say this together out loud. Ready? 1 Peter 3:18a. "For Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, that he might bring us close to God." Now, there's a lot of different fun ways that we can practice this together. I'm going to encourage you parents to get creative with your kids in how to practice this memory verse together and to do it in fun, different ways so you can remember it for next week. Well, that's all that we've got for today. Today, we talked about Jesus and one of the ways that he makes us right with God. One of the great things that he does when he died for us. And who is Jesus today? Jesus was our perfect what? Substitute. That's right. Jesus was our perfect substitute. He makes us right with God, and he takes our punishment for us. Isn't that good news? It's great news. I hope that good news is a blessing to you. Have a great night. Take care.